$470,000, $370,000, $230,000, 3 accounts, 1 person, $100, every other Friday, 30 years, $78,000 contributed out of your own pocket, 3 different endings. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which of those 3 curves you're actually on right now, in one row on your last statement that decided it for you. Start with the input, because the input is the part everybody can agree on. $100 every other Friday. That's 26 paychecks a year, $2,600 a year, $216 and change every month on average. Across 30 years, the money that leaves your checking account and goes somewhere else adds up to $78,000. 78. That's the line you have to keep in your head, because it doesn't change in any of the 3 accounts we're about to walk through. What changes is what happens to it once it leaves your hands. The first curve is the simplest one. You open a brokerage account, or a Roth IRA. You buy a total market index fund, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, the names don't matter. The expense ratio is 3 or 4 basis points. You set the auto transfer for the day after payday. You never look at the fund. You don't try to pick the right month to buy. You don't sell when the news gets loud. You don't switch to cash because somebody on a podcast told you the market was about to break. Roll that number forward 30 years at the S&P 500's long-run nominal rate, historically somewhere around 10%. The account lands in the area of $470,000. Your contribution? $78,000. The rest, almost $400,000, is time doing what time does when nobody interrupts it. Look at the math on that. You didn't outsmart anybody. You didn't pick the right stock. You bought the entire market once a paycheck for 30 years and let the rate compound. That's the first curve. That's the boring one. Hold on to that number. What does that account actually buy you that the other 2 don't? Mostly it buys you nothing, standing between you and the rate. No layer that takes a percentage of the top every year. No human across a desk who suggests a reallocation when the news gets loud. No glossy quarterly statements showing you a benchmark you didn't ask to be compared to, just the index and the calendar. The second curve uses the same $100, now routed through your employer's 401k into the default target date fund, the one with the year of your expected retirement in the name. The fund is fine, it's diversified, it rebalances itself, and most people who use it never have to think about it once. That's the point of the product. According to Vanguard's How America Saves report from 2024, the average expense ratio for a target date fund inside a workplace plan is around 30 basis points. That's roughly 10 times what you'd pay for the Bear Index. Add a little tracking error. Add the slow shift into bonds in the last decade before retirement, which costs you some of the equity premium. Same input, same 30 years, the account lands closer to $370,000. Is that a bad outcome? Honestly, no. $370,000 on a $78,000 contribution is a result most people who think about retirement never reach. It's just not the first curve. And the spread between the first and the second is bigger than people expect, because the fee compounds the same way the rate compounds, quietly, every year, until year 30. Why does the default fund win the workplace plan, even when a cheaper option sits in the same plan menu? Because nobody chooses it. The default is the option that doesn't require a decision on the Tuesday afternoon you set up your benefits, and the firm that runs the default makes the most money on the default. None of that is hidden. It's all in the plan documents you got on day 1 and never opened. The design of the plan is the design of curve 2. The third curve is the one that gets pitched in person. You walk into a wealth management office at 32 with $100,000 saved, and a real human across the table tells you they can manage the account for you. They use the language you'd expect: personalized, tax efficient, rebalanced quarterly, behavioral coaching during volatility. The fee they quote is reasonable. Call it 1% of assets under management. It sounds small. It is small in any single year. Pull up your statement. Find that line. It's the row you scroll past on the second page. Then there's the second number you don't see on the statement at all. It's the spread DALBAR has been measuring every year since the 1990s. The difference between what the equity market actually returned and what the average equity investor actually kept. They put it at roughly 2 percentage points a year on average across 20 and 30-year windows. Some years it's worse. The spread doesn't come from bad funds. It comes from selling in March of 2020 and buying back in August and missing the 4 trading days that did most of the recovery. It comes from someone in a suit gently suggesting maybe we should de-risk at the precise wrong week to be doing it. March of 2020 is the canonical example. The S&P 500 dropped about 34% in 5 weeks. The average advised client got a phone call. The phone call sounded reasonable when it landed. Protect what you have, wait for clarity, come back in when the picture is less ugly. The phone call cost the account something like a third of the next 18 months of recovery. That's the spread in one event. Multiply something like that across 30 years of market noise. You get the third number. Roll that 2% spread forward 30 years on the same $100. The account lands closer to $230,000. Same input, same 30 years. $240,000 between the first curve and the third. That's a down payment in most US cities. That's the one row. It moves one direction, no alternatives. I'll say the part nobody puts in writing. The curve that gets quoted to a 32-year-old walking into a wealth management office with their first 100,000 saved is almost never the first one. It's almost always the third. Not because the advisor is lying. They believe in the third curve. They've watched people stick with the account through bear markets because someone was there to keep them in their seat. They're not wrong about that part, but the fee is the fee, and the spread is the spread, and the math is what you live inside for 30 years, not what gets said in the meeting. I had a friend ask me to look at his 401k statement 2 summers ago. He was 31. The account had been open since he was 23. 8 years of contributions, a target date fund picked by default on the day he was onboarded. The balance was around $200,000. The fee row at the bottom of the statement was a number he had never read. For that 1 year, it was a little over $1,400. I asked him to multiply it across the 8 years and roll it forward to retirement at the rate the account had been earning. He stared at the calculator for a second and said, "I thought that part was free." I think about that line a lot. Small pause. The next few minutes get into the part nobody wants to sit with, the real spread between starting and waiting. Subscribe to NetSum if you want to stay with the breakdown that names that spread directly instead of softening it. So why does this happen? Why does a small fee make a $250,000 difference over 30 years? The answer I keep coming back to is that fees compound the same way returns compound, except in the opposite direction. The expense ratio gets quietly subtracted from your account every year. The amount you don't see is the amount that doesn't earn the next year's return. Year 1, it's nothing you'd notice. Year 5, it's noticeable if you look. Year 20, it's gravitational. By year 30, almost half of what was supposed to be your retirement is sitting on a different balance sheet. This isn't theory, it's arithmetic. Drop the input into any compound calculator, $216 a month, 30 years. Adjust only the fee. Watch what 30 years does to the difference. There's one row on your statement that tells you which curve you're on. It's called expense ratio if you're sitting in a fund. It's called advisory fee or wrap fee if there's a human attached. If you can't find it on the first page, look in the back. It's the number that decides whether the rest of the page is curve 1, curve 2, or curve 3. It's also the number that doesn't show up in the marketing emails the firm sends you. They put the year-over-year return at the top. The fee row is on page 7. And while I'm being honest about it, the part where most retirement advice goes wrong is the part where it tells you to optimize the wrong variable. Try to pick the right year, try to pick the right fund, try to time the next correction. You can do all of that for 30 years and still land on curve 3 because the row you never read didn't change. The variable that actually matters is the one you set once at 23 and then forget about. It's the boring one. That's why it works. The call is this: Open the account at a place that publishes its expense ratios on the front page. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, the three names everybody mentions for a reason. Buy the total market index fund or the S&P 500 fund. Set the auto transfer for the day after payday. The amount is whatever you can move out of checking without noticing. For most people watching this, that's somewhere between $50 and $300 a paycheck. You don't have to pick the perfect number, you have to set it up once and walk away. Here's the operational sequence in case you've never done it before. Saturday afternoon, open a brokerage account at one of the three names. Takes about 15 minutes if you have your driver's license and your routing number in the same drawer. Link your checking account. Place a single buy order for the total market index fund. Then, and this is the part most people skip, set the recurring purchase on the account itself, not as a calendar reminder on your phone. The platform calls it auto invest or recurring buy. Pick the day after payday, pick the amount, hit confirm. That's the entire transaction you have to make. After that, the account does it without you for the next 30 years. What's the smallest version of this if you can't move $200 a paycheck right now? The smallest version is 50 or 25 or whatever number stays inside the noise of your spending so you don't reach for it. The amount isn't the point. The auto transfer being on is the point. You can adjust the number in 3 years when salary moves. You can't adjust the 30 years you would have lost if you waited for the right number to start. Discipline isn't a mood you sustain for 30 years. Nobody sustains a mood for 30 years. Discipline is the absence of a decision. You set the auto transfer on a Saturday afternoon, and after that, you don't have a decision to make every 2 weeks for the rest of your working life. That's the whole secret. It's boring. It's also what the first curve is made of. The account doesn't know who you are. It knows one variable, what you set it to do. It does that until you tell it to stop. Now go back to the three numbers from the beginning: 470,000, 370,000, 230,000. Same paycheck, same $100, same 30 years. The first curve compounds the input. The second curve compounds the input minus a small fee. The third curve compounds the input minus a fee, minus a behavior spread, minus the meetings that talk you out of staying in your seat. 3 different fates for the same $100. And the only thing that decided which one you live inside is the row on your statement you were never supposed to read. Pull up your statement tonight. Find that row. It's already deciding.